This video is sponsored by Nakano Knives. More about them coming up shortly. Hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series dedicated to Vietnamese classics with a shot at a sweet and savory pork meatball known as bun cha. Bun cha, originating from the street cuisine found in Hanoi, features a fatty ground pork that has been combined with aromatic veggies and a number of sweet-leaning additions to yield its sweet and savory quality. To pair with this, we'll then be serving our meatballs with a side of vermicelli rice noodles or bun, as well as a fish sauce-based nuoc cham to create our sweet and savory meal. More traditionally, the bun cha meatball would be grilled over an open flame to yield the crisp, caramelized exterior quality that it is known for. For our version today, however, we'll be doing our very best to replicate this open flame quality using a wok sear at home since we don't have access to an open flame ourselves. This, of course, will prove to be a little tricky though, since the higher sugar content in our meatballs will put them at more of a risk of burning if we don't control our wok temperature properly. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so kicking things off here first with our meatballs, we're starting off with our aromatic veggies, which, as you might have guessed, will all require small chops so that we can pair it with our meatball shape. This is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic to start, followed by 1/2 of a purple onion that I'm small dicing here as well, using the root end of the onion to hold it together as I chop. I'm pairing this with a 1/2 pound of ground pork, followed as promised by a wide array of sweet umami-driven elements to create our sweet and savory meatball. First up, this is going to be 2 tablespoons of fish sauce to start, followed by a single tablespoon each of oyster sauce and hoisin sauce, as some of you may know, all 3 of which are very high in sugars. Then we're going to round this all out with a single tablespoon of brown sugar and a 1/2 teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder. This is going to give us just a little extra nudge of umami here too. Finally, now this is optional, but I'm also including a single tablespoon of pork fat here before mixing this all to combine. Obviously, our ground pork already contains a good amount of fat here, but if you have it, a little bit of extra fat will yield a softer and more tender meatball. This is rendered and clarified bacon fat that I'm using here for myself, but you could also swap this out with a tiny bit of lard too. Once our ground pork is mixed up, I'm oiling both our tray as well as my hands here so that we may begin rolling out our meatballs. This is going to help prevent the ground pork from sticking to my hands as I work. We're going for meatballs roughly the size of a golf ball here. I'll be honest, I did get a little lazy and didn't bother weighing these out with an ounce scale because my hands were already quite oily when I thought to do this, so we're left with one slightly smaller meatball for ourselves here, which is fine. Moving right along though, next I'm doing a quick pickle to some carrots and daikon, which should pair nicely with our meatballs and nuoc cham sauce. For those looking, this is largely borrowed from our cold soba noodle recipe from a while back, so it may begin to look similar here. I'm starting by peeling 3 medium carrots here, then slicing these thinly into coins, followed by a similar preparation to our daikon here as well. If you're a normal human, you may consider doing this with a mandolin since we do want very thin slices here. If you are as stubborn as I am about single-use kitchen items though, and you do find yourself doing this with a knife, it's going to be a lot easier to do when equipped with a quality well-sharpened knife like this beautiful Nakano Santoku knife that I've been using all day. Nakano's Santoku knife is made with high-quality carbon stainless steel, meaning that it will stay sharp over a long period of time. Now, this is a knife demonstration, so of course we're going to shred some paper and prove how absurdly sharp this knife is out of the box, but if I'm being totally honest, pretty much any knife is capable of doing this, provided that it's been properly sharpened. What I personally look more for in a nice knife is the way that it feels in my hand, how it's balanced, the ergonomics of the handle and tang, and so on. Probably the biggest point of contention for me in this department is the spine of the knife, which rubs against the palm of your hand as you chop. A well-crafted knife like this one will have taken the time to round out and shape the spine of the knife for comfort, whereas the cheaper knives that I've used will often have a razor-sharp spine that digs into the palm of your hand and causes blisters over time. For folks who are interested, read more about Nakano in the description of this video or visit nakano-knives.com/woocancook and use the discount code woocancook to save 10% off of your total purchase. Okay, so back to our daikon. Over on the stove, I have a cold saucepan awaiting, where I'm going to briefly bring our brine to a simmer here before combining with our carrots and daikon. This is a half cup each of water and distilled white vinegar to start, followed by a single tablespoon of Japanese mirin, and finally 2 tablespoons of a clear grain liquor. This is a Chinese baijiu wine that I'm using, but sake would likely be a little bit more appropriate if you have it available. Finally, I'm rounding this out with a half cup of white sugar here, then bringing this all to a simmer until it has dissolved. Back over on the cutting board, we're adding this to our carrots and daikon, then covering and setting aside for a minimum of 30 minutes or ideally overnight. Last up, I'm assembling our nuoc cham sauce here, which once again you may recognize from a number of our Vietnamese recipes that we have done on this channel already. This, of course, is because you may expect to see the nuoc cham sauce paired with a lot of Vietnamese cuisine that features vermicelli in particular. We're starting off here with our aromatics. This is 4 Thai chili that have been destemmed and sliced thinly, followed by 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, which for some reason I filmed out of order here, I don't know. Then, as promised, we're pairing this with a 1/4 cup of fish sauce to form the core umami of our sauce, rounded out by the juice of half of a lime for some acidity. Finally, I'm pairing this all with 2 tablespoons of white sugar and a 1/4 cup of water, then mixing this all to combine. Last up, before heading over to the stove, this is 8 ounces of dried vermicelli rice noodle that I'm rehydrating in boiling water for about 5 minutes. This stuff is very delicate though, so I'm shocking it in cold water once it's tender to halt the cooking process, because it will very quickly overcook if you don't. Over on the stove, I have my wok heating up at a medium heat, then I'm adding 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, and as always, long yao for that nice non-stick surface. Now, as I mentioned earlier, wok searing these meatballs proved to be a little bit tricky because of the higher sugar content in the filling. Sugars, when cooked over an open flame, play pretty nicely. On a cooking surface like our wok though, these sugars will be pretty temperamental and can tend to burn before caramelizing, like our first attempt here. So, for our second attempt at replicating an open flame here, I found that the key to our sear is going to be a consistently medium to medium low temperature in the wok to make sure that the meatballs can cook through to their center. Then we're also going to pair this with plenty of wok rotation to keep our fats in motion. If you've done this correctly, you should be left with some nicely seared and caramelized but not burnt meatballs for your puppy to stare at hungrily. I'm serving this all up with our nuoc cham sauce to start, paired with our pickled daikon and carrot on the side. Then to go along with this is our vermicelli noodle, followed by a handful of mint leaf and lettuce, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so I'll start off by mentioning that these bun cha meatballs were definitely one of the trickier dishes to replicate without an open flame, because the higher sugar content of the meatball was definitely pretty temperamental when made on a cooking surface. I'll be honest, I definitely was a little bit frustrated with the first burnt batch here. If you can nail your wok or pan sear here though, the remainder of this dish was pretty simple to assemble and definitely was one of my favorites that we have explored in Vietnamese cuisine. Our meatball was crisped and caramelized with a wonderful sweet and savory quality to it, which pairs really nicely with the sweet and spicy qualities of our nuoc cham sauce. Finally, the last bit that I'll mention is that although I do think that the plating looked really nice here with all of the meatballs piled into the bowl, I think the more practical way of eating this dish is by adding a single meatball at a time, then dipping the vermicelli and veggies into it with each bite, which, you know, is less pretty but a lot easier to shove in your face though. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. A special thanks to Nakano Knives for sponsoring this video. If you haven't yet, head over to nakano-knives.com/woocancook and check out their Mito series for some solid, affordable chef's knives. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice interneters, and I'll see you soon. Bye.